Hey, did you know you're gonna die? I'm sorry if this is the first you're hearing about this, but it's true. Right now, you're alive, listening to this audio. Your heart is drumming, your neurons are firing, but someday, shockingly soon if you zoom out far enough, you won't be. When you die, your body ceases its functioning. A body that once made choices and held preferences and dreamed impossible dreams becomes a body that no longer does anything at all. Not unconsciousness, not sleep, those are just intermissions. Life and death are a description of your potential. Linguistically, when we say something is alive, we mean it is able to make choices and determine its own existence. When we say something is dead, we mean that it can no longer do anything again. Xerneas and Yveltal are life and death incarnate. Xerneas represents trees, life, and the bright multitude of living. And Yveltal is a specter of death and destruction. They are a duo, but there's a burning question at the heart of any depiction of life and death in media. Is this really a fair fight? After all, we are dead for time immemorial compared to how long we are alive. An infinity occurred before we lived, and after we die, there will be an equally oppressive and silent blackness of time afterwards. Close your eyes. Count to 1. That is how long infinity will feel when you're dead. So how can Xerneas and Yveltal be opposing forces? Life is so fleeting and minuscule compared to the vast blanket of black, silent death that covers the cosmos. We even call the entirety of the universe dead. A prevailing theory about the life of the universe is that entropy will extinguish every single star and render the entirety of space-time null and empty. Even if you believe in a universal consciousness or the interconnectedness of matter, science theorizes that even this universality will eventually and permanently end. Yveltal wins. Xerneas loses. One is a totalizing emptiness, and life is just a puff of smoke spreading out to fill that emptiness, like a candle trying to stay lit in the black, wet ocean, at least according to the most rational and current view of the universe and physics. But that's kind of convenient, isn't it? That's a strange word to use about such a bleak future, but it's very tidy. It's a view of life and death that frees humanity from the universe having any meaning. If nothing matters in the long run, then nothing matters now, and we can all just relax. No afterlife to worry about, no cosmic responsibility, just a rational, sterile, mathematically perfect emptiness. What a relief. I'm not here to deny the science. Heat death is going to swallow everything. Yveltal's wingspan covers the entire sky, but something in this story feels incomplete, like we're missing an axis on a graph. We have X and Y, but what else is there? What I'm trying to say might bend your mind slightly, but bear with me. I'm going to say a phrase that won't make sense now that I want you to keep in mind throughout the video. Nothing doesn't matter yet. Nothing doesn't matter yet. In the games, Xerneas is not subservient to Yveltal. In fact, it's more powerful than it. It has a type advantage, fairy over dark. It is taller, it is more imposing, and more regal. Why? How can Xerneas master Yveltal in a universe where Yveltal has already won? How can life beat death at all? Is it possible? Is it a fantasy? And are life and death even different in the first place? And what's this guy's deal? The Kalos region possesses a long and intricate history, reflected both in its enduring medieval fortifications and in the modern urban landscape of Lumios City. But not all of this culture exists as galettes and grand towers. Recent events have drawn renewed attention to the region's more troubling technological legacy. Incidents over the past decade, including the second Geosenge incident and the prison tower disaster, have prompted scholars to reimagine the origins and functions of ancient Colossian weapons of mass destruction. Historical sources indicate that during the late Z dynasty, the monarch AZ reigned in what was largely a ceremonial capacity. Despite the monarchy's reduced military role, records from the Colossian Royal Guard describe the conscription of AZ's partner, Floet, during the protracted Colossian Civil War. Floet's subsequent death in an undocumented battle is widely regarded by historians as the catalyst for AZ's commission of a device later referred to as the ultimate weapon. Documentation preserved by the Colossian Alchemical Guild suggests that the machine's initial purpose was restorative, an attempt to revive the deceased Floet. According to conflicting legends, AZ is said to have used either Xerneas or Yveltal to power the weapon and bring life back to Floet before turning the weapon on both armies fighting in the Civil War. This event, known retrospectively as the Geosinge Incident, resulted in widespread devastation. According to extant chronicles, AZ was subsequently deposed and exiled. His brother, LZ, assumed the symbolic throne and ordered the internment of the weapon beneath what is now Geosinge Town. After the later dissolution of the monarchy, members of the Z lineage transitioned into influential and commercial roles within Lumiose City. Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde are three Pokemon that make up one of the most mysterious trios in the Pokemon franchise. Let's examine them all one by one. Xerneas. Xerneas. X from XYZ. Similar in sound to Cyrenean, as in Cyrenean hind from Greek myth. In Japanese, Xerneas. It's the life Pokemon. Xerneas is a stag, its antlers and hooves forming an X shape. It is blue and incorporates rainbows. It has an active form where its horns glow, and a neutral mode where its horns remain blue. Its base stat total is 680, which is the same as Yveltal. It shares this stat total with Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina from the previous video. It is a fairy type, and learns the signature ability Fairy Aura. Xerneas' Pokédex entries are as follows. Legends say it can share eternal life. It slept for 1,000 years in the form of a tree before its revival. When the horns on its head shine in 7 colors, it is said to share everlasting life. Disappointingly, the new ZA game does not heavily feature Xerneas, and it recycles its Pokemon Y Pokédex entry. There are numerous questions that arise here. Why is Xerneas the life Pokemon? Does it control life? Does it only grant immortal life? More research is needed. Yveltal. Yveltal. The Y in its name comes from X, Y, and Z. Yvel sounds like evil, and Yveltal is similar to Quetzal or Quetzalcoatl. In Japanese, Iberutaru. It is the destruction Pokemon. Interestingly, Yveltal is not the death Pokemon, even though it is clear that this is its theming. Pokemon are children's games, but they don't shy away from death, especially in their Pokédex entries. So why is death turned to destruction? In Yveltal's Japanese entry, the word Hakai or Hakai Pokemon is used. Hakai directly translates to destroy, with implications of vandalization and demolition. Yveltal is a bird with hands at the ends of its wings and a hand-like appendage on its tail. It is red and black and forms a Y shape. Its base stat total is the standard 680. It is dark flying type and has the signature ability Dark Aura. Yveltal's Pokédex entries are as follows. When this legendary Pokemon's wings and tail feathers spread wide and glow red, it absorbs the life force of living creatures. When its life comes to an end, it absorbs the life energy of every living thing and turns into a cocoon once more. The Pokédex entry in the new ZA game recycles X's Dex entry, but replaces when with "it is said that." Again, this is a disappointingly bare-bones change. Zygarde. Zygarde. Z from XYZ. Zygarde is a compound word using zygote and guard. In Japanese, Zygarde. It is the order Pokemon. There's a lot to cover with Zygarde, and it is in fact a many-faceted Pokemon. In its original games X and Y, it was obtainable as a singular Pokemon, but in the later games Sun and Moon, various forms were introduced based on how many Zygarde cells were collected. Finally, in Legend ZA, it gained a Mega Evolution. All forms of Zygarde are Dragon Ground type, and it has 2 signature abilities and 4 signature moves, which is more than any other Pokemon. Let's start with the smallest Zygarde, the Zygarde cells and cores. There are 100 Zygarde cells, and each one appears to have some kind of consciousness. They aren't Pokemon in the normal sense, in that they cannot be caught or battled with. The Zygarde core is the main part of Zygarde, and the rest of the cells coalesce around it. Next, Zygarde's 10% form. This form is available when 10 of the 100 cells are collected. It resembles a green and black dog. It also has a butthole. The 10% form has a base stat total of 486, which is not particularly exceptional among legendary Pokemon. 10% form's Pokédex entries are as follows. Its sharp fangs make short work of finishing off its enemies, but it's unable to maintain this body indefinitely. After a period of time, it falls apart. This is Zygarde's form when about 10% of its cells have been gathered. It runs across the land at speeds of greater than 60 miles per hour. This is Zygarde when about 10% of its pieces have been assembled. It leaps at its opponent's chest and sinks its sharp fangs into them. Born when about 10% of Zygarde's cells have been gathered from all over, this form is skilled in close-range combat. ZA recycles Ultra Sun's entry. Zygarde's 50% form is the form available in X and Y, as well as the Sun and Moon series. It is the standard form of Zygarde. It resembles a snake and forms the letter Z. The 50% form has a base stat total of 600, which means it is actually lower in power to Xerneas and Yveltal in X and Y. 50% form's Pokédex entries are as follows. When the Kalos region's ecosystem falls into disarray, it appears and reveals its secret power. It's hypothesized that it's monitoring those who destroy the ecosystem from deep in the cave where it lives. This is Zygarde's form when it has gathered 50% of its cells. It wipes out all those who oppose it, showing not a shred of mercy. It's thought to be monitoring the ecosystem. There are rumors that even greater power lies hidden within it. This is Zygarde's form when about half of its pieces have been assembled. It plays the role of monitoring the ecosystem. Some say it can change to an even more powerful form when battling those who threaten the ecosystem. Pokemon ZA recycles Y's entry. Zygarde's complete form is available in Sun and Moon when all of the cells are collected. It is also used in ZA's finale. In ZA, the complete form is not a permanent form and only occurs when Zygarde is below 50% health. Its base stat total is 708, and it is the only Pokemon with that total. The complete form's Pokédex entries are as follows. This is Zygarde's form at times when it uses its overwhelming power to suppress those who endanger the ecosystem. This is Zygarde's 100% form. It has enough power to overwhelm even Xerneas or Yveltal. This is Zygarde's perfected form. From the orifice on its chest, it radiates high-powered energy that eliminates everything. Born when all of Zygarde's cells have been gathered together, it uses force to neutralize those who harm the ecosystem. ZA recycles Ultramoon's entry. And finally, Mega Zygarde, introduced in Pokemon Legends CA. It gains a 5th signature move called Nihil Light, and gains an immense cannon above its head. Its base stat total is 778, which is 2 below the absolute maximum stat total of 780, held by the Mega Mewtwo's and Mega Rayquaza. Mega Zygarde's Pokédex entry is as follows. In response to people's emotions during an unprecedented crisis, Zygarde Mega evolves and calms the situation with its unmatched power. Zygarde in all its forms is, bar none, the weirdest legendary Pokemon there is. 5 signature moves, 2 signature abilities, 4 different forms, and a dizzying base stat total. It seems like it is Game Freak's favorite, but in fact it didn't even heavily feature in its home generation, and it was an optional side character in the subsequent generation. And even in the most recent game, where it is the main legendary, it isn't obtainable in the final fight and doesn't even appear on the box. Its role is almost totally ambiguous. It protects the ecosystem. Isn't that the Swords of Justice's job? And its forms, dog, snake, guy, and gun. What is going on here? More examination of this weirdo is clearly required. Local Kalosian oral traditions maintain that AZ and Floette were rendered immortal through exposure to the ultimate weapon's energy, though such claims remain unverified. Professor Sycamore of the Pokemon Research Lab has publicly expressed skepticism regarding the weapon's operational capacity. Conversely, the modern socialite Lysandre attempted to reactivate the device. Lysandre's catastrophic failure led to the dissolution of Team Flare and legal action against its leadership. Although Lysandre is commonly asserted to be a descendant of LZ, definitive genealogical evidence has not been established. A counterpart to the ultimate weapon, called Anya, was recently discovered embedded within Prism Tower in Lumiose City. Evidence suggests that Anya was designed as a countermeasure to the ultimate weapon, though the precise date of its construction remains unknown. Prism Tower's creation predates recorded Kalos' history by more than 2 millennia, making accurate dating difficult. Malfunctioning systems within Anya remained unnoticed or unaddressed for an extended period. Subsequent dismantling efforts undertaken by the independent engineering firm Quasartico inadvertently triggered the Prism Tower disaster, which caused more than 7 billion Pokédollars in structural and economic damage when Anya went berserk. Both Anya and the ultimate weapon remain enigmas for historians. The largest mystery is their power source. Could Xerneas or Yveltal be capable of outputting the level of energy needed to bring back Pokémon from the dead? Could AZ still be walking the world? While present-day authorities report that both devices have been fully decommissioned, their existence underscores the complex and often contradictory technological legacy underlying Kalos' celebrated cultural landscape. The mythology for the so-called Aura Trio is included in Pokemon X and Y, as well as more on Zygarde in the Sun Moon series, as well as 2025's Pokemon Legends ZA. Let's start with X and Y. The plot of Pokemon X and Y both center upon Team Flare and their leader Lysandre trying to make use of an ancient weapon that is connected to either Xerneas and Yveltal, who provide life and death energy to the weapon respectively. Each Pokemon remains in a cocoon for 1,000 years, Xerneas emanating life and Yveltal absorbing it. Upon their escape from the cocoon, Lysandre tries to take their power, but is thwarted by the protagonist of X and Y. There is astonishingly little about these Pokemon in their respective games, with the weapon almost completely eclipsing their actual lore. There's more about AZ and the history of Kalos than there is about these guys. In X and Y, Zygarde's story is even more threadbare. It does not appear in the main story and is encountered in Terminus Cave. Pokemon X and Y have received criticism over the years for being incomplete. It broke the series' tradition of having a third installment, such as Emerald Platinum and Black 2 and White 2, so fans have speculated that Zygarde was intended to be a mediator between Xerneas and Yveltal, like Rayquaza between Kyogre and Groudon. This ambiguity, however, I believe is actually a little intentional. More on this later. Sun and Moon. In Pokemon Sun and Moon, Xerneas and Yveltal are inaccessible, but Zygarde serves a role as a side quest. In the game, there are 100 hidden Zygarde cells that can be found and added to the Zygarde core to upgrade the Pokemon throughout the game. It does not serve a major function, but a few things can be inferred by this. First, there's the fact that Zygarde is scattered in this way, and then second, the fact that it's up to the player to recover this. This implies that Zygarde is incapable of reforming on its own power and needs help from humans. Zygarde is likely scattered in this way because of the reasons stated in its Pokédex entry, to monitor the entire ecosystem. This makes for an interesting dynamic. Zygarde exists all over and then comes together in order to monitor and protect the ecosystem. Maybe if Zygarde sees danger, it might use nearby cells to come into its 10% form, and then in larger crises, it would need the help of humans to fully reform. In X and Y, when it is seen in its 50% form, It is likely that it appeared as it did since it detected the Team Flare crisis, but no one was able to form it completely, so it was only able to sort of muster its 50% form. This, of course, is speculation. Finally, in ZA. Unfortunately, Xerneas and Yveltal are similarly absent from Pokemon Legends ZA. I'm going to be honest, this seems like a grievous error, as the X and Y theming is very much still present throughout the game, even on Mega Zygarde's canon. But the two previous box legendaries are sequestered away in unrelated post-game side quests. They aren't even given a lair or a dungeon. I said before that the ambiguity leads to more ingenuity about lore, but this is just sad. There's no love for these two. Zygarde, on the other hand, is present throughout the story, though to be frank, it's not interesting. It's not captured or wielded by the player at all until the post-game, and it is only confronted a few times in the game's story. The player must become worthy of Zygarde throughout the story, but what that means is ambiguous, and it's eclipsed by the larger narrative. There are details that prop up the earlier theory that Zygarde cells need to be collected by humans, as Lysande, now going by L, says that he has collected all of the cells, the last one being with the player. I hate to say this as it is very disappointing, but ZA doesn't really give us anything meaningful or more workable information, unlike how Legends Arceus was much more of a treasure trove for this kind of information. Next, we'll talk about the movies. I don't usually involve Pokemon movies in my analysis, but since there's scant to go on, I would like to briefly discuss movie 17, Diancie, just in order to try to get some kind of foothold on how to discuss Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde. The film depicts Yveltal and Xerneas in a less balanced relationship than in the games. The games depict life and death being value neutral, with immortality being seen as just as bad as destruction. But the film poses Yveltal as the antagonist. After rampaging the land years ago, Yveltal has entered into a cocoon to hibernate, and the conflict of the film surrounds Diancie trying to find Xerneas to stop further destruction. Movie 19, Volcanion, also has Zygarde in a supporting role, but this too is inconclusive. Okay, what now? I don't say this lightly, but these Pokemon have very little to go on. Outside of the speculation in their dex entries and the absurdly minute appearances in their games, the so-called Aura Trio are as disparate as it gets. They are barely in any kind of balance. Xerneas is the life Pokemon, depicted as mysterious but unambiguously good. Yveltal, the destruction Pokemon, doesn't fully mirror Xerneas, and seems actively malevolent. And then finally Zygarde, who is alleged to keep the duo in balance, but really only exists as its own thing, without any connection to the other two. How is any meaning to be derived from this? There's less to go on, but taking a step back, we can bring things into focus. Let's discard the idea of Yveltal representing destruction alone. These are the Pokemon of life and death. There is no doubting that. Life and death are just as ambiguous in reality as they are in the Pokemon world. What I'm saying is, this ambiguity is the same as in real life. Why did life come about? Why do we have to die? As I said in the beginning, these are big questions with no concrete answers. In this way, these creatures reflect the concepts they're based on. Life as mysterious and scary. Death as pointless and cruel. Zygarde in the middle, attempting to create some kind of balance. So let's stop trying to wring blood from a stone and get to what life and death could mean. One, Yveltal and death. A personified version of death is kind of universal across cultures. The whole skeleton with the scythe, it's found everywhere. Taro's Death 13, the Spectre, the Memento Mori. Humans have long struggled to humanize death in a kind of attempt to come to terms with their own mortality. The famous film The Seventh Seal depicts a knight playing chess with death to prolong his own life, which spawned a whole slew of different symbols. Yveltal is an interesting spin on the death character. Death in media is usually personal, as he appears before you on your own, a personal death. Sometimes he's only visible to you, but Yveltal's Pokédex lists him as a destruction Pokemon. This isn't the concept of personal death, but something more broad. In X and Y, in the films, it is asleep in a cocoon for 1,000 years before reawakening, which reflects less of a personal death and more of a societal death. Many societies fall in way less time than that. Yveltal represents death writ large, the looming specter of the death of not just the self, but meaning in its totality. It's the reminder of entropy that is lurking in a cocoon, waiting to strike. 2. Xerneas and life. Life is depicted less often than death, usually as its counterpart. Life is usually represented by blooming flowers like Xerneas or trees. One example of a life-death relation is actually in Adventure Time, where death has a romantic, unrequited affection for life, who takes the double snake shape of the caduceus. The tree, which Xerneas also resembles, is a cross-cultural symbol of life, from the North Yggdrasil to the Egyptian sycamore. Much like Yveltal, Xerneas represents a vision of impersonal life, the life of the entire planet, life as a concept, a whole. And further, it represents life overcoming death. Xerneas is larger and more imposing than Yveltal and has a type that defeats it, as I discussed before. 3. Zygarde and balance. Zygarde is difficult to connect with the concept of life and death. It's never depicted in legends with Xerneas and Yveltal, and in fact their overlap is a little flimsy. And yet it is undeniably in the name, Zygarde, X, Y, and Z. So what is the connection between beings embodying life and death and one embodying order? First, let's look at forms Zygarde takes. First, the cell, the fundamental element of life. This joins life and death in a very potent manner. A cell is a living thing, certainly, but our own cells are not alive in the same fashion that you are. You are a sum of your parts, and the cell is the boundary. The cell is made of dead molecules, dead atoms, and yet it helps you live. Next, what does the dog 10% symbolize? Loyalty, utility, a being who unfailingly follows orders and laws. And the snake, usually associated with trickery and evil, like the serpent of the Bible, but at the same time, the snake has long represented wisdom and intelligence. Snakes are also found in every part of the world, which transcends these limitations. And finally, why does Zygarde come to resemble a human? It is the concept of order that has finally been anthropomorphized. Ultimately, Zygarde represents the kind of order that comes from synthesizing two disparate concepts. This kind of synthesis exists in many cultures and traditions, most notably the concept of yin and yang in Taoism, but also the idea of syzygy in Gnosticism. 4. Greek gods. There are a great number of Greek gods and goddesses that have an overlap with the X, Y, and Z trio. I will now describe them in a brief list. First, Xernean gods of life. Gaia, or Mother Nature. Eros, primordial god of love. Demeter, goddess of fertility and seasons. Persephone, Demeter's daughter and bringer of spring. Artemis, goddess of hunting. Hera, associated with fertility. Dionysus, associated with rebirth. Asclepius, god of restoration, healing, and medicine. Next, Yveltian gods of death. Hades, lord of the underworld. Thanatos, death psychopomp. Hermes, occasional psychopomp. Nyx, mother of Thanatos. Charis, spirits of death. Charon, who is a death psychopomp. Hecate, associated with the dead and magic. And then Morpheus and Hypnos, gods of sleep and liminality of death. Finally, Zygardian gods of balance. Themis and Dike, mother-daughter goddesses of justice. Nemesis, goddess of retribution. Harmonia, goddess of concord. Ananke, sometimes Kronos' wife, who maintains order. And Irene, goddess of peace. I promise this isn't just because I've been playing Hades 2 that I'm doing this list. A good place to start on Greek mythology is Edith Hamilton's Mythology. 5. Egyptian gods. Egyptian myth, or Kemetism, is a very death-obsessed culture. Again, here is a lightning round of life, death, and balance gods. First, Xernean gods of life. Atum, creator god. I can't believe I didn't bring up Atum in the fucking Arceus video. He's literally called God by Hermeticists. Ra, sun god, provider of light and life. Isis, mother god. Hathor, associated with motherhood. Bes, another mother figure. Min, associated with fertility. Now the Yveltian gods of death. Osiris, lord of the dead. Set, god of chaos. Anubis, who is a psychopomp. Ammit, the devourer of souls. Wepwawet, occasional psychopomp. And the sons of Horus, 4 gods who are associated with embalming and mummification. Oh, and Serket, who is a psychopomp. That name should be familiar. Here are some Zygardian gods of balance. Ma'at, weigher of hearts upon death. Thoth, god of measurement, compared to Hermes. Horus, god of order and kingship. Shu, who separates the sky and the earth. Nephthys, balance between life and death, and Set's wife. In particular, the story of Ma'at brings to mind Zygarde. Ma'at is said to weigh the hearts of humans before entering the afterlife, and if they are wicked, they are cast away and consumed by Amit. There are explicit themes of balance, scales, protection, etc. If you're interested in Kemetism or Egyptology, there is a robust subreddit on it called r/Kemetic that I've been browsing. I admit I don't have as much familiarity with Kemetism as I do Greek and Norse myth. 6. Norse gods. I'll be more brief in this section as I have less to say. I'm sure one could make a more exhaustive list, but Norse culture had less emphasis on life and death as balanced or opposing concepts. They were all about, righteously dying in battle and such things. Freyr and Freya are associated with Virtue and life, Hel is associated with death in the afterlife, and Tyr, in spite of being a god of war, is also the god of justice and righteousness. I also mentioned earlier Xerneas' overlap with Yggdrasil, the life tree, but Yveltal is rather lizard-like in appearance and could be compared to Nidhogg, the serpent gnawing the world tree, though this is somewhat blurry because Zygarde also takes the form of a snake and is decidedly not a Nidhogg. 7. The Hindu Trimurti. The Hindu Trimurti are Hinduism's highest gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. I discussed them briefly in the previous video, but they have less to do with Arceus and his creations and more to do with what's going on with the parallels with the Aura Trio. I would say the Trimurti are the most direct parallel that the Aura Trio have in any mythology. The 3 of them represent one step on the death and rebirth cycle. Brahma is the god of new life, Vishnu is the preserver of that life, and Shiva is the eventual end every life needs in order to create new life. They are respectively Xerneas, Zygarde, and Yveltal. Hinduism, which is a reincarnation religion, believes that life and death are an endless cycle. This is radically different to the Western view, which holds that death is permanent and any afterlife is similarly permanent. In the games X and Y, neither Xerneas nor Yveltal are seen as good and evil in themselves. In Pokemon X, for instance, Xerneas, the being of life, is used to power a machine of death. In the same way, none of the Trimurti are good or bad, because there is an overarching permanence to the concept of life. Brahma and Xerneas are both creators and life-givers. Brahma is associated as well with wisdom. Brahma isn't worshipped heavily in India, which might be a shock to Westerners, who, by contrast, credit Yahweh God with creation, and that is the reason for worship. The reasons for this scant worship differ, and I'm not myself Hindu, but I understand it is because, first, his work is finished, and second, because his life is associated with attachment to the world, which is something to be avoided due to Hindu asceticism. Vishnu and Zygarde are both protectors and watchers. Vishnu is associated with change and development as well. He is the central figure in Vaishnavism, which is a religious sect of Hinduism where he is worshipped as the supreme god. This sect most resembles the idea of a Western god, as it depicts Vishnu as both omnipresent and omnibenevolent. Shiva and Yveltal are both destroyers who make way for new creation. Shiva is associated with war. Shiva is the primary deity of Shivaism, go figure, which is a religious sect of Hinduism where they are worshipped as the supreme god. Though Shiva is a destroyer and some of their aspects are explicitly violent, such as Kali being a consort of Shiva, Shiva is seen in the context of rebirth and renewal, emphasizing the regenerative nature of death. Again, for people who want to learn about Hinduism, the FAQ at Our Hinduism has some great resources. I'm not Hindu myself, I'm just going into this from a mythological angle.
This is a myth of Almighty Sinnoh and its eternal adversary, Giratina. There appeared upon the world 2 spirits, Yveltal, the spirit of death, and Xerneas, the spirit of life. Sinnoh looked down upon creation and pondered, saying, "From whence have they come? For they appeared at the turning of life, or the closing of days, and vanished soon after. Surely, spake Dialga, the male, Xerneas is of Arceus, and Yveltal is of Giratina, for life brings newness, and death an ending. Nay, spake Palkia, the female, Yveltal is of Arceus, and Xerneas of Giratina, for death renews, and life is a blight upon the world." So, Dialga and Palkia wagered a trial. For 30 days, no new life would spring, and for 30 nights, no old would perish, that they might see whether life or death was of greater measure, and to whom the spirits belonged. For 30 days, Yveltal ruled unchecked, taking as it pleased, giving nothing back. Famine and plague opened their mouths upon the world. And for 30 nights, Xerneas ruled unbridled, filling as it pleased, never abating, and the flood and drought laid waste to the lands. Seeing the havoc wrought, Sinnoh sought to bring the spirits back into balance, but now, drunk upon their powers, Xerneas and Yveltal could not be calmed. The people cried aloud, and the Pokemon suffered with them. Then Sinnoh raised from the earth a mighty guardian, Zygarde, a dragon glistening with green scales, whose black hand expanded to cover all the world. And for 30 days and 30 nights, nothing died, and nothing was born. And calmed by the watch of Zygarde, Xerneas and Yveltal withdrew to their dens. And Zygarde was sundered into millions of pieces, scattered to every corner of the earth, that it might observe always and keep life and death in balance. And yet, it is still unknown from whence these spirits were born, and the hearts of all creatures tremble at their passing. In its name, Arch Xerneas Nothi.
So, life and death are very important in Gnosticism. Well, they are in any religious tradition. In the Neo-Valentinian apocryphal Christian tradition, as spoken of in the tripartite tractate, each human being exists with three components: a hylic physical body, a psychic thinking nous, and a pneumatic soul that contains our essence. It's an oversimplification, but that's the basics. Each one of these three components could be said to be alive and will experience a death. Thus, in Neo-Valentinian tradition, we say that any human being must contend with 3 deaths. If you want more information about this, it's in my Gnostic Crash Course video. First, the hylic death, when our body dies permanently. Second, the psychic death, which occurs many times over our lives when we lose who we are, often violently. And finally, the pneumatic death, the death we experience when realizing we are part of the Godhead and are in fact not real. Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde are disparate and strange beings, but by examining them and the stories about them, we can learn potent lessons to take back to our own lives about how to cope with death. And something more complicated: coping with life. One of the great questions that plagues the human being is what happens when we die. Religions offer many answers, and science offers objective truth, but none of them really answer the question: how can we find something that is both true and meaningful? Religion offers many false depictions of death, like the folly that Ma'at literally weighs a feather, or the pulp cultural depiction of a sort of cloudy paradise of heaven. And science only offers us these kind of cruel facts. In other words, science offers us truth and religion offers us meaning, but never both. Gnosis offers us this final bridge between meaning and fact through the metaphor of the Gospel of Mary. The Gospel of Mary is an incomplete Gnostic text discovered at the Nag Hammadi site and has been translated by Mark M. Madison and can be found on gnosis.org. Some of the information is only complete because it is corroborated by other texts such as Allogenes, but the text is not complete. In the text, Mary describes the ascent of a soul, presumably Jesus' soul, though this is speculation. Life, personified in Xerneas, and death, personified in Yveltal, represent two sides of the same coin. Life and death aren't separate, they're the same. In Pokemon X and Y, in spite of the fact that they are opposite forces, they are used in equal measure by the antagonists for evil. Lysange sees he can achieve the same wrathful goal by making himself immortal or killing everyone. They are functionally identical processes. Similarly, in the Gospel of Mary, if life is a trap, then death is the escape, but death has problems of its own to contend with. If life and death are the same thing, then how do we transcend death? How do we get over that issue? We don't have to get over life in the same way. Reading from the Gospel of Mary, let's begin on page 15. The first scene depicts a being called Desire speaking to Christ's soul. And Desire said, "I didn't see you going down, but now I see you're going up. So why are you lying, since you belong to me?" In response, the soul said, "I saw you, but you didn't see me or know me. I was to you just a garment, and you didn't recognize me." When it said these things, it left, rejoicing greatly. Again it came to the third power, which is called ignorance. It interrogated the soul and said, "Where are you going? In wickedness you're bound. Since you're bound, don't judge." The soul said, "Why do you judge me, since I haven't judged? I was bound even though I haven't been bound. They didn't recognize me, but I've recognized that everything will dissolve, both the things of the earth and the things of heaven." Okay, what the fuck does that mean? This passage is very opaque and requires a lot of context. The soul, the speaker, is encountering malevolent forces which are personified, and they're having a metaphorical conversation about them. In other words, this is not literal. The soul is not literally meeting with these forces, they are representations of emotions and feelings and concepts. This conversation represents the emotions and passions that keep us bound on Earth. Bound to our body, you could say. First, the soul speaks to Desire. Desire claims the soul belongs to it, but the soul says, "No, I was just a garment to you." The meaning of garment here is symbolic. The soul is saying that Desire wore the soul, meaning that Desire does not represent the soul's actual self. Next, the soul speaks to Ignorance. Ignorance claims the soul is bound in wickedness, but the soul rebuffs this too, saying it has not judged nor bound anyone in turn, and that the earth itself is impermanent. In this way, the meaning of life and death reverse. Life is a prison, and death is freedom from it. But work must be done for this liberation to occur. In Pokemon, Lysandre attempts to overcome life and death for selfish gain, without Gnosis, for the sake of his own sort of fascist takeover. He wants to power a weapon and give into this destructiveness. He wants to judge and bind, unlike the exemplary soul in the story. The difference is the soul, he says, "No, I do not desire. I am not ignorant." Lysandre is ignorant. It is wrathful. Here's another reading from the Gospel of Mary. When the soul had overcome the third power, it went up and saw the fourth power, which took 7 forms. The first form is darkness, the second desire, the third ignorance, the fourth zeal for death, the fifth kingdom of the flesh, the sixth the foolish wisdom of the flesh, and the seventh the wisdom of anger. These 7 forms are of great importance. On top of the number 7 being very significant to Gnosticism, as well as things like alchemy and Hermeticism, they are powers of wrath. Lysandre, more than anything, is wrathful. He desires to scrub the world of anyone who's not within Team Flare. He has fallen for every vice of life and death do not bend to his will in the end. They actually undo him. I said at the beginning of this video, nothing doesn't matter yet. What I mean by this is that it's true that nothing matters, but the state of not mattering has not been achieved yet. It won't matter in some hypothetical future, but it does matter right now, and right now is the totality of existence. What I mean by this is, Lysandre is essentially someone who is trying to overcome death through power. He is trying to overcome death through this ultimate weapon. Ultimate weapon is very important. Even though AZ created this ultimate weapon to resurrect his Floette, he ended up using it as a weapon. This is incredibly different to how the soul speaks to desire, ignorance, and wrath. The soul says, no, I'm not going to judge anybody. And so this is saying that Lysandre is trying to defeat death in an outward fashion. He's trying to go out into the world and defeat death. That's never going to happen. The soul is saying you must defeat death within yourself by living virtuously. And virtuously means doing no harm in a very concrete sense. Lesson 2. Syzygy and Death. In my Gnosticism crash course, much of the runtime is devoted to aeons and their syzygies. I don't think that Yveltal and Xerneas are necessarily aeons, but their existence is dualistic, and Zygarde's is syzygistic. What I mean by this is that both concepts cannot exist on their own in a healthy fashion and require cooperation. Syzygy also concerns gender. Xerneas and Yveltal are gendered. I discussed this in my previous video, but gender does not refer to literal sex or gender that we would experience, but thematic and archetypical gender. Xerneas is female, as femininity is associated with fecundity and power, while Yveltal is male, as masculinity is associated with renewal and violence. In this way, there are two sides to the same coin, the blue and the red aspect. In a literal sense, life could not exist without death, and vice versa. They imply one another. If life continued indefinitely, it would cease to be life, categorically. Immortality is a different thing than mortality. And death cannot exist unless life exists to nullify it. We, for instance, do not call a stone dead, except symbolically, as it had no life to begin with. Zygarde, representing balance, is the necessary syzygy, the thing that overcomes both of them, the thing that it is greater than. It represents the life-death continuum in a way. Like I said before, cells, which Zygarde is made of, are liminal between life and death, comprising us, which is alive, but they are also not in and of themselves animate. They don't experience consciousness, as far as we know. They are a state between life and death. In this way, it is not useful for us to think of life and death as separate at all, not in conflict, but complementary. We could call this the life-death continuum to build on the time-space continuum established by Dialga and Palkia. Two beings, male and female, coming together as one. What are the implications of this life-death continuum? Life and death, separately, are hylic terms. They describe a state of homeostasis, not of the mind. The mental state would be called the conscious and unconscious. Ergo, the life-death continuum is a hylic concept. Describing homeostasis, we could reframe our entire understanding of life and death completely. To humans, the idea of life is connected to the ego. In other words, when we say, I am alive, you are referring to both your hylic and psychic component. And when you die, you understand this to mean that your consciousness is ending. Indeed, scientifically, if the consciousness is contained, so to speak, in the brain, then our hylic and psychic selves die at the same time. But there's no evidence to actually prove this. In a past video, I discussed the idea of panpsychism, the idea that consciousness and thought is not exclusive to humans but to the universe. In other words, the psychic self transcends the hylic self. Our mind transcends our body. Imagine this. Every atom currently in your body was previously a non-animate atom. In other words, the burrito that you ate became your left hand, and that matter was never alive. The wheat was killed, and the wheat came alive again when it became your hand. This means that every atom in your body is not in and of itself alive. If every atom is not alive, then your cells are not alive. If your cells are not alive, then how can you yourself be alive? What I'm saying is, your constituent parts are not in them of themselves alive. If you cut off one of the atoms in your hand, it would not be alive. It wouldn't do anything. It's not logically possible for you to be alive in a strictly hylic sense. Your atoms exist on the life-death continuum, and their existence in certain organizations causes a phenomenon that we call life. But that's not really true. It doesn't exist. Life does not exist. And if life does not exist, well, the death does not exist. This is a fun little mental experiment that I'm doing right now, but you might be thinking like, okay, you just disproved that life exists, but I'm still alive. I know I'm still alive. Like, it's self-evident. You can't disprove something like that. And you're probably still afraid of your own death. You might be thinking, just because death and life are subjective to us in a fashion, we are still subjective beings that will experience it in a way. There is no way to use logic and reason to escape the fact that you're going to die. That's true. But this conclusion that life is an illusion created by the mind is very important gnosis. It means that something of significance is now occurring within you as we speak. Self-awareness. This self-awareness, this consciousness above your body, is the life-death syzygy. It is the answer to the hylic death, and it is the way that we are able as humans to overcome the problem I was discussing here. The problem of meaning and truth. If we are self-aware, and that is what we truly value of life, then that self-awareness does not necessarily dissipate after death. In a panpsychic world, which is something that has been posited by real scientists, I cannot overstate this enough. This is not pie-in-the-sky religious claptrap. This is actual science, or proposed science, I should say. If we live in a panpsychic world, which we might, where consciousness is universal and the body is not alive, the experiences we have as self-aware beings will contribute to a real, permanent repository of knowledge and information, the collective unconsciousness as real. When Zygarde is scattered, it dies. When Zygarde is cells, it dies. Its body can no longer exist, and because it's cells, it's no longer a constituent being. We are Zygardes. We are made of cells that will someday disintegrate into our graves. But like Zygarde, because our cells change, it does not mean we are dead and gone. It simply means that we are dissipating into something greater. The Hindus and Buddhists call this nirvana. Right now, our self-awareness is focused into a singular point, and is able to have a new, novel, and meaningful experience for a short, beautiful time before we return to all the universe. We believe that we die. We believe that someday we'll die. But we understand the conservation of mass. I'm here to give you the gospel, if you will. You are immortal. You are, in a real, physical sense, the universe. You are the universe. We are made of star stuff. That's Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan said that. A scientist, a rationalist, was able to understand this concept. Thank God. Right now, you are what you eat. You are a focused point of self-awareness floating within yourself, and you must consume yourself to live. So live on. Please live on. I'm going to end this part, which is pretty heady, with a reading from the Gospel of Thomas, Logion 11. Jesus said, "This heaven will pass away, and the one above it will pass away. The dead are not alive, and the living will not die. In the days when you consumed what is dead, you made it what is alive. When you come to dwell in the light, what will you do? On the day when you were one, you became two. But when you become two, what will you do?" Lesson 3. Phase. In a previous video, I outlined the 9 Gnostic phases and their meanings. During the course of this series, I will be categorizing each of the legendary Pokemon into one of these 9 phases. For more information about the phases, look at my video about it. The link is in the description. Zygarde is the easiest to categorize here. It is a force of incredible protection over the ecosystem, according to its Pokédex entries. It is a protector of the cosmos. It belongs in the choir phase. Part of the description for choir reads, "Everyone has their immutable, beautiful place, and you play yours perfectly. Yet you sometimes feel like your actions aren't your own. Sing in the choir. Walk in the lines." Yveltal and Xerneas are a little harder to place. They represent life and death, which, as discussed, is Hylic, which would associate them with the Archons, the rulers of the Hylic realm. It's difficult to choose between choir like Zygarde, but they belong in Radiance, where Dialga and Palkia are located. They represent fundamental and immutable aspects of our Hylic lives. This chart is expanding, and hopefully next time I'll talk about some non-Hylic legendary Pokemon. I'm planning the next episode on Uxie, Azelf, and Mesprit to round out more of the Generation 4 legendaries.
It's Funk McLovin, hovering above reality, slicing through the static with the lucid mind clarity. Gnostic commentary with the planetary cadence. Patreon's the portal where we upgrade your awakeness. Step into my temple, no ego, no hassle. My Patreon sermon's free, no password. You fund the funk, keep my heart thumping. Support the revelation, keep the cosmos drumming. Then I shift gears, smooth on the tube for you. Breaking media down like a digital guru. Catch me in the tall grass, data stream broadcast. Great hits with the wit, my style's unmatched. Funk McLovin, double life mission. Patreon and YouTube, I'm a mind physician. Gnosis in the morning, fresh beats at night. 2 places, 1 vibe, let's keep it tight. Join the Patreon if you feel the vibe. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm also on Bandcamp. Sorry, I got something in my teeth, fuck. Was that popcorn? Anyway, bye.
Alright, for the last part of the video, I always like to discuss various topics I foresee people bringing up, like criticisms. First, I'm not a scholar of Hinduism. Right now, I'm studying Hinduism and Buddhism kind of actively, since the latter has a lot of concepts that overlap with Gnosticism and early Christianity, but I am not an authority. I am still a learner, so if anyone has additional insight or is Hindu themselves, please tell me more and give me and other commenters more resources. I would appreciate that. Second, this video was kind of critical about Xerneas, Yveltal, XY, and ZA, and if I'm being frank, I think that these 3 legendaries are the weakest and kind of the most threadbare of all the legendaries. And because of that, my analysis at times turned blatantly into scriptural analysis more than Pokemon analysis. Since this is a Gnosticism video, I'm assuming that's fine with everybody, but I just wanted to talk about that briefly because it's disappointing to me that they just never did anything with the life and death Pokemon. I don't know if they were afraid of it or just they never got around to it, but both X and Y and ZA, I think, are decent games that just miss a lot of potential. On a personal note, I think ZA in particular was kind of a massive letdown from a lore perspective. It was very fun gameplay-wise, but lore-wise it was shockingly a fumble. The fact that Xerneas and Yveltal have absolutely nothing, and Zygarde was reserved for the final boss as like a set piece, it's just appalling to me. It's fucking crazy. If Legends Arceus was like 2 steps forward, ZA is 3 steps back. Even though it doesn't dampen my enthusiasm for the Legends series, I think that in a couple years we'll get something better, and I look forward to what's more in store. As always, the goal of this series is to use Gnosticism to extract meaning and lessons from games. To use a shorthand so that people can understand this stuff better. To use the language of Pokemon to help you improve your life and make a positive change. That's obviously a very naive goal. That's a very idealistic goal, but I want to help you. I want to guide you, to lead you if you think I am able. And for those uninterested in life advice, then you can enjoy just new information to take home with you. This I do for free. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And because I'm trying to get some more eyes on this project, share it on social media and Reddit if you can. It would mean a lot to me. This video series is my own quest for Gnosis. And now, a Gnostic prayer of my own writing. The humans in congregation hear the vitality of my words. I share with your minds the truth. I offer the silent depth and a glimpse of the monad.